So what's going on, guys? My name's Chopper, and welcome everybody back to a brand new video on the channel. Hope you're all having a great day, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about 20 easy pro tips to help you play smarter. So that's right, we're going to go over 20 things that you can start doing right now, implementing into your gameplay, and if you follow these, the more you follow, the likely your game is going to dramatically improve. And not only that, but if you start implementing these really high IQ plays, then you should start to see your brain get a bit more massive. But for real, these 20 tips I hope are able to help you, and if they are, I would really appreciate if you guys enjoyed this video, if you could leave a like rating. It is absolutely free, and that helped me out a ton. And of course, subscribe if you are brand new to the channel as well. Don't forget to do that. The anticipation for a 250,000 subscribers on this channel should keep building with you guys, because I have something that's absolutely mind-blowing for when we hit that milestone. Now, I can't reveal anything yet, but trust me guys, it's gonna be worth it. But without further ado, everyone, let's get into this. Tip number 20 is a simple one, but I think it's underrated how useful this actually is, and this is getting your crosshair color right. Now, there's not like one color that's just single-handedly going to be the most advantageous color to have, but you can play around with it and discover what you like. However, there are some recommended colors. For example, changing your crosshairs to be like a dark green or even like a brownish orange is a really bad idea. Even if you might like those colors, it's just unfortunate because it's going to blend into the environment way too much. Some colors you'd like to have are maybe like bright reds, even some deep purples. For me personally, I prefer like a really light blue, not only because it sticks out amongst most of the environment, but also I just really like the color. So I think having a combination of those two factors should help you decide your crosshair color, and the point of it is to basically be your aim that's going to, no matter what, you're never going to lose sight of it. If you've never bothered with changing your crosshair colors, I suggest you do, just because, you know, you might think it looks a little bit nicer, and it also probably will end up helping you in the long run. Tip number 19 is going to be parachuting correctly. Now, I'm going to have a future video very soon about this parachuting more in detail, but since parachuting is so fundamental to starting off and having a good game, you know what I mean? Like, it can really determine whether it's a win or loss based on your jump at the end of the day, so it's important to get this right. And it seems like right now in PUBG, the best way to land is to jump maybe about 1,000 meters out from your location and just glide there. Just like, don't try to dive at all, don't try to pick up any speed, just simply glide there and then dive right at the very end as you're at your location, and you should be one of the first to land. It's kind of unfortunate we don't have the S dive or the wave dive anymore, because I really feel like that took a lot of skill, and I liked doing that, and it's unfortunate it's gone now. But yeah, the new way to parachute is just a much more simplified version of it. And if you still find yourself struggling with parachuting and landing first, then you can always jump into a training mode and then, you know, try out parachuting and give it a couple tries, and it's unbelievably helpful for helping you land quicker. Taking tip number 18 is going to be fine-tuning your sensitivity. Now, unfortunately, there's a couple of really easy ways to do this, but contrary to what some people would have you believe, there's not just like one best sensitivity that's going to work for everybody. What sensitivity really comes down to, no matter what platform you're playing on, whether it's mobile, PC, or console, the most important factor in all this is muscle memory, and the only way you get good at that is through practice and time playing. But what's great is that to like sync your muscle memory with your brain, you don't even have to sit there and play public matches for hours and hours, and sometimes, you know, that can be stressful and hard to find, but you can just jump into a private match and play around with the weapons. That's a really good way to just get a lot of raw play time in. Fine-tuning your sensitivity is crucial because it's going to help you aim better, it's going to help literally every aspect of your gameplay, and it's one of the most fundamental things for getting good at any video game. Tip number 17 is going to be carrying every throwable, or at least as far as that's possible. Now, there's of course going to be some games where you just get really bad luck with loot, and you're not finding at least those frag grenades that you need, or those smokes, whatever it is. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. But generally, what I tell people is if you want to be a really good and flexible player, then it's important to not only carry all of these throwables, like all the different kinds of them, but also know how to use them, because they all have their own scenarios in which they can be useful and effective. This even means like pick up a couple stun grenades if you see them. You might not even end up using them at all, but it's honestly better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Carrying all these throwables is going to require you to manage your loot a little bit more efficiently than most players, so that's something that it's a skill that you're going to learn, but it's unbelievably helpful. For me, I generally say 2 of each throwable, except with frag grenades I usually carry more, and then Molotovs I carry a little bit less just because of how much they weigh, but smoke grenades are really important. Stun grenades I'm actually starting to try to use a little bit more, even though they're inconsistent, but frags are by far and away the most important. Taking the number 16 spot is using your crouch jump. Now, no, listen, we're not throwing this back to last year where the crouch jump was literally the way to get around. This is still useful in the game, but in a little bit of a different way. This is how you can get out of windows without using your vault, and it's actually something that I recommend to every player. Now, getting good at this skill and using it for every window is going to require a lot of practice, because it's not an easy thing to learn, and some windows are like easier than others, and there's ones that you can't do it on weirdly, so it is kind of a glitch, but it's something that's important because you can basically get out of a window without ever having to drop your weapon. For what it's worth, you can also sit up in like a window frame after breaking that glass, instead of just jumping out, you can stay in like a really weird angle and catching people off guard sometimes, and it's something that people just don't expect. The only downside to this thing though is that it's kind of like contextual. You don't want to completely get rid of your vault as your like method of getting in and out of windows, because it's still something you're going to have to use from time to time, as not every window is like viable for this. But if you can do this on most, then you're in good shape. And I think with the addition of the ledge grab, these two mechanics are going to work really well in unison. You'll be able to get in and out of buildings like you're Spider-Man. It's going to be crazy. Taking the number 15 spot is going to be looting minimally, and this is like a little bit harder to do than you think, because we all make mistakes like this. Even the best players in the entire game make this mistake all the time, just because it's so easy to do when you're in the heat of battle and you're looting people and you're like swiping, just getting all the loot as much as possible. It's really easy to take like 12 first aid kits without even realizing it, and then taking up way too much backpack space. You're clearly not going to need 12 first aids in most cases, but it's hard to know exactly what you need for the rest of the match. It's something you got to evaluate as you're playing. There's no simple rule to that, and that's why it's such an easy mistake to make, because you constantly need to be evaluating the situation of your game and what you think you're going to need, and only take that. Anything extra might end up slowing you down in one way or another in the future of the game, and so it's important to do this as best as you possibly can. Tip number 14 is something I've been trying to do a lot more recently, and it's been extremely helpful, and this is carrying every single variety that you can find of scopes, like as many different magnifications as you can use, because what I realized is that each scope and each weapon can be extremely niche, and then there's so many gunfights where you need that very niche weapon. Like for example, you might think having an 8x and a 6x scope is kind of redundant, because you know the 8x can do whatever the 6 can, but I don't think that's necessarily the case, especially on some weapons where the 6 is probably only available for your AR, and if you want to kind of use it as like an AR/DMR, you can only do it with that. And so I've realized that taking more is probably better than having less. My ideal scope variety is having a red dot on my main weapon, and then like a 3x, 4x, 6x, and 8, and then having all of those available just like makes me really comfortable in game. Tip number 13, and this one's going to require some practice, but this is getting good at having spatial awareness, and this is extremely useful, especially when you're hot dropping. So like in any given instance, let's say you drop in Pochinki, it's really important to know what guns are where, which people are on what floor, which angles are you vulnerable from, which angles can you use to find your enemies. All of this stuff, I know it sounds like a lot, and it is, but it's something that you develop as you play a lot more. Although I will say, when it comes to spatial awareness, even in like the just generality of the game, paying attention is probably the best way to develop that. And it's also safe to say a lot of spatial awareness comes down to map knowledge, and that's just again with time played. So all this develops when you get more hours, whether you realize it or not, but it's an absolutely important skill to have as well. Tip number 12, this one's gonna sound like a really like self-obvious one, you know what I mean? But this it's actually like a more common mistake than you might think. And this is, if you take damage from one angle and you know your enemy is still holding that site, then you never peek again unless you're absolutely confident you can get the kill, and that's generally never the case. Even if you change the angle on your enemy even slightly, they still have to adjust their aim, and that can buy you the time you need to get that kill, but you never peek the same angle twice, especially if you get hurt once. It's way easier said than done though in the heat of battle, and we all make this mistake from time to time. Coming in at number 11 is going to be, in my opinion, the best way to revive teammates. Obviously, you know, it's pretty common knowledge to every PUBG player that dropping a smoke grenade on your down teammate is the safest way to revive them, but also what I've noticed is that getting behind them, you really never want to get in front of them for where the gunfire is coming, because if you're getting shot while you're reviving, then worst case scenario is you both die. But if you get behind them and you kind of use them as a little bit of a shield, if you get their revive off, they're going to get all their health back, and that's going to be fine. But even if they get shot and they die, only one of you goes down, but you're still up. If you're the downed person, then turn your back towards the gunfire if you have the pan on you, because that's going to be absolutely your best friend. You have much better chances of getting the res off. Tip number 10 is going to be stocking vest into a house or a compound. Now, I've been doing this a lot recently, and it's actually one of those things that I don't know why I haven't been doing for a while, because it seems like such a high IQ play, and it's very easy to do as well. So let's say you're holding a compound, you and your squad, or just you, whatever it is. If you're going to roll up and you plan to hold a building or just some sort of structure for an extended period of time, then you can actually go around the compound and stock up on vest in one room or one area. Of course, this can be done with helmets as well. You can stock up on as much armor as possible, and if they take any damage whatsoever, then you're going to have essentially an armory of fresh ones waiting for you. The only dangerous part is, because you have to go and drop your vest in order to go grab a new one, then in that time where you're running to get the new one, then you are completely vulnerable with absolutely no armor. So you got to make sure that nobody's around while you're making the runs. Tip number 9 is a super easy one to follow, and it's something that I've recommended ever since like the early days of PUBG. Now, when it comes to level 2 helmets, because there's 2 different types normally, I always recommend, if given the opportunity to choose between the 2, always take the darker one. Now, I don't have any hard evidence to back this up that it's better to run the darker helmet, but in my opinion, it seems that the darker one, when the enemies are wearing it, is a little bit harder to hit and track, and the sand colored one is really easy to outline and then line up that headshot, and I always recommend the darker one just because it is a bit harder to see for your enemies. Of course, this is assuming both helmets are clean, right? If one's damaged at all and it's the darker one, then of course swap out for the lighter one. You're just going going to want durability more than anything. That's what's important. But when you have the choice between the two colors, I always recommend the dark one. Tip number 8 is something that I get questions about a lot in my comment section, and this is about the colorblind filter that you use. Now, it's not recommended that you always have to use one, but I prefer to, number one, because it kind of makes the game look a little bit cooler depending on what you have, but also it does give you a genuine advantage in the way that you can see blood a little bit easier. Seems like in every version of PUBG, the red blood is always the most difficult and hardest one to tell if you hit somebody with, and so what I recommend is to run either like the blue one, which is a really nice, easy color to see, or run the one that makes the blood like a very bright, hot pink. And then also, it's going to change like the way your red dots and everything look, so if you like that kind of thing, then that's just an added bonus. There are some people that are absolutely like genuinely colorblind, and this is made for them, but if you're not colorblind and you just want to be able to see your enemies a little bit easier, then I would recommend at least one of the colorblind settings. There's not one that's just, you know, obviously better, but try around all of them and then see what you like. Ticket number 7 is going to be a really advanced tip, but an important one. This is going to be balancing and equalizing your audio. Now, if this is not something that's your thing and it's something that maybe a little bit too complicated, then it's not super important. Maybe it's not entirely crucial, but it's something if you really want to take your game to the next level, then I recommend you do. This is basically going to be equalizing your audio so that it makes footsteps easier to hear while reducing the unnecessary sounds. Now, because there's a bunch of different types of equipment that everybody uses for audio, then there's not one rule that's going to work for you, right? You have to play around with this yourself and then see what works best. If you can get it to a point where footsteps are really easy to hear, then all the unnecessary sounds are a little bit quieter, then great, you got it correct. And honestly, if you don't want to mess with the equalizing, I recommend just play with your game kind of loud. Yeah, a lot of the loud and unnecessary sounds might get a little bit annoying, but the minuscule sounds that are really important, you're going to be able to pick up on. Tip number 6, guys, is going to be knowing the vehicle spawn points of the map. And this is like something that I feel like is more important than ever now, as players are getting really good at the way they traverse the map, and now the fact that players are also getting good at shooting from vehicles, it's important to at least have one of these in most matches, minus Sanok because I don't really drive in here. But even so, these maps are so big that it's important to know where these vehicles are going to spawn in case you go somewhere you're not super familiar with and the zone, you know, pops really far away. You're going to have to make a move. Long gone are the days where most of the players in game would end up dying because they get stranded outside the zone. They have no way to get in. The best way to learn the spawn points for every map, in my opinion, is to go in your replay mode and then just watch. Like, look for patterns about where cars are spawning in and at what times, because not every single spawn point is always going to have a car. That's part of the like loot element of PUBG. But having a good understanding of where vehicles are most likely to be can help you orient your entire game. Tip number 5 is another simple but like underrated tip, and this is going to be, if possible, to always use your right peek if you're going to do it, because if you don't know, the left peek exposes way more of your body than is absolutely necessary. And this is especially hard to know if you're playing first person because you can't really see your own player model and how much you're showing off, but the right peek is always better. And what I recommend is that when you're gunfighting, you always try to set yourself up in a position where you can right peek. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't ever left peek. I'm saying you got to use it contextually, but the right lean, no matter what, does give you a little bit of an advantage that the left that cannot give you. Tip number 4 is something that I think we talked about in a video recently, but I feel like is so important that it's worth mentioning again here, and this is getting good at crosshair placement. Essentially, this is where you keep your crosshairs during any point in the match. It's important that you have your crosshairs up at headshot level, like if you just happen to see an enemy, pretty much at all times, even when you're looting. You know, you want to have like your head on a horizontal swivel with your crosshairs, and that's going to give you the most steady aim. And then, of course, using your verticality when necessary, but it's important to keep your crosshairs always up at headshot level in case an enemy is where you don't expect them to be. Tip number 3 is going to be making smart rotations with the zone, or at least trying to stay one step ahead of where it's going to go. In PUBG, there's two very general types of players for the most part. There's players that like to play the direct center of the safe zone at all times as possible, and then there's people who like to play on the edge of the blue zone and then follow it in. Now, both of these strategies have their flaws, and to basically make smart rotations with the zone, it requires you to understand what kind of player you are. The secret to becoming a good PUBG player is to be comfortable playing anywhere. If you could fight on the edge of the zone and all the engagements that come with that, or if you could hold a compound or a hill directly in the center of the zone and having all angles, you know, vulnerable for attack, that truly is the secret to mastering a map and getting good at it, is being comfortable in all situations, no matter where the zone goes, and then trying to stay one step ahead and then plan accordingly. If you're a more passive player, you might want to go the route of staying more center in the zone and like holding compounds and then just waiting for people to come to you. If you're more aggressive, you might find yourself, you know, you're better on the edge of the zone and then sweeping in as the zone moves. There's a lot of variables in it, and it's something that's going to change as you continue to play more of this game. Taking number 2 spot is going to be a general rule, but it has a lot of specifics to know about it. This is going to be optimizing your attachment. So for example, right, the way that I prefer my M416 based on my style of play is with a red dot, a compensator, a vertical grip, an extended quick draw, and of course the stock. This is the way that I'm going to choose to run my M4 for most of my engagements. There are exceptions to that rule. For example, I might want to use a longer range scope and a suppressor if somebody's, you know, extremely far away and I'm not going to be able to hit them single tapping with a red dot, and vice versa. If you're a player that likes to run the suppressor more than anything, it's completely completely pointless to run one of those in the late game, especially when the circle is like very, very small, because there's no point of being able to be hidden with that. Also, the fact that an attachment like the sniper compensator might literally be the most useless item in the game, because this compensator is good on DMRs, of course, and that's where you can use it on, but you can also use the assault rifle one, which is way easier to find. And then, of course, if you run a sniper compensator on a bolt action sniper rifle like an AWM, it does absolutely nothing. Same thing with the cheek pad. So just knowing some of the specifics of these attachments and how they affect your weapon based on your playstyle is really good game knowledge to have under your belt. And so finally, guys, coming in today at the #1 spot of the best tip that I can give you right now to help you become a smarter player is to get good at mantling. Now, this is something that I really need practice on, because the ledge grab just got added to the game, and if the ledge grab is not in your platform where you play at yet, it will be soon. And this is something that is really going to determine how good you are maneuvering around the map, and then learning all the new angles that come with this mantling or ledge grab, whatever you want to call it. And this is going to change a couple of times too, as PUBG is going to add a couple iterations of the ledge grab and some new mechanics to it as well. So this is something that I got to get practicing on right now. And of course, if you guys play on PC and you can play the ledge grab as well, it's something I would definitely jump on at the moment. If it's not there for you yet, then just maybe watch other people use it and then practice with it when it does come to you. But this is without a doubt the next biggest skill set in PUBG to learn, and I can't wait to take this on. But anyways, guys, I hope you did enjoy today's video. If you did, I would really appreciate a like rating. Subscribe if you are brand new, of course, and if you are supporting this channel, if you haven't already subscribed to my second one, I'm uploading more content over there pretty consistently, so open link in the description and go subscribe to my second channel also before you go. But anyways, guys, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you all on the next stream or the next video. Take it easy and peace out.